the Strength of America podcast.
Welcome to episode 17 of the Strength of America podcast. Bob Davis.
Bobby Davis.
Bobby, what's the topic today?
Today we're going to talk a little bit about muscle imbalances. When we talk about that, generally a lot of that comes from either doing one type of motion all the time, not working the backside. That's the mainstream aspect of it. But also is thinking about a lot of us hit the big muscle groups very often, okay? But we often neglect the littler ones that help aid and work in movement. So we're going to go over a little bit of some of that today. What some of the smaller muscles roles are, how we can work them, and start to spark some ideas and thoughts about that for some of you guys.
Yeah, and keep in mind, it's obviously with that part of it, we talk about the weight room, but this was anything. My younger athletes are 10 to 12-year-olds getting ready for baseball and doing things. They've got basic things they do to get stronger, to move. They work on things all the time. But we tend to see an athlete, the overtraining happens because they work on one muscle group all the time, or they play one sport all the time and don't work on the secondary things to help really create that balance and to keep their healthier as they go along. So
yeah, and I think on top of making sure that they're resilient and they're staying healthy when they're playing, also increasing their performance. Because if certain muscles are neglected, obviously if I'm throwing and that backside's weak, okay, it's going to definitely inhibit my ability to throw often and repetitively, because I'm going to start to spark up some issues and things like that. But also I'm not going to have the structure, the strength in that structure to give me foundation to really launch that ball, okay, or drive it fast, or hit a ball, okay, or sprint, run, cut, jump, really anything when you think about it. But now when we get to some of that, we'll talk about maybe not just the rotator cuff like we have been, okay, but now we're talking about the next role, okay, some of those small muscles and some of the muscles in the upper back, okay, maybe we're talking about some of the hands, the muscles in the fingers and the hands, okay, the ankles and the toes, those muscles, and some of those types of deals.
And that's where we're starting our foundation again early, getting those kids like we started with Bobby and so many other kids when they were young, 10, 11, 12 years old, starting them doing some strength training. It was very beneficial to keep them in there, because I can tell you the number of high school athletes we see, and again, if we pick up our baseball players, for example, they're dominant one arm, right arm throwing all the time. You take a look at their back and how thick they are, or different strength or flexibilities they have. They neglect the other end. Well, I'm always thinking about throwing, so I've got to work harder on this arm. I've got to get stronger. Well, what happens when the pec and the shoulders get stronger, or traps, everything else, and when the opposite side we're weak, I can tell you as that body gets older, the stress is pulled on from having too much strength on one side compared to another. And again, that doesn't mean, okay, well, let's get weaker here so it evens out. How about we work the opposite side that they don't think about? Or golfers, how many of you golfers out there that play? I mean, ideal world, we'd hit that drive with the right hand, we'd go back the other way, hit the left, we'd balance it out throughout the time. But some of them are getting, you're getting your money's worth on that golf course. You're swinging 100 times out there. And then how many times you do the opposite motion at all, or flexibility to the left and right. So we've got to address that. And that's what today's really about, taking a look at what we do with our primary lifts and what are some of the other things to help us with longevity and keeping that joint stable.
Yeah. So on top of working those little muscles and some things like that, to help correct those imbalances, we've got to realize that a lot of those smaller muscles, or the antagonist, okay, the opposite side of the muscle, okay, let's say I'm bench pressing, okay, the backside of the muscles have to work to stabilize me while I'm pressing and moving. Okay, so we got to think in sports when we're moving, okay, whenever we react in one way, the muscles on the opposite side are doing something to relax and then work on the opposite side when it comes back. Okay, so we gotta know that, and we gotta understand that if those muscles are weak, okay, those are our stabilizers. Okay, we don't want our stabilizers to have an issue or have a problem. Okay, now we're really going to run into issues as far as performance and injury prevention sake. Okay.
Yeah. And it's the same thing going in. Again, we talk about the strength. We're going to strength, real strong quads or hamstrings or hips, all that's great. But if we don't work on the deceleration muscles, and that's kind of next week, we're going to get a little bit more about that. But our change of direction, we can be fast, but if we can't decelerate, we can't change direction and do it great, unless you're just running track, we're going to be in big trouble out there on the court and the field. And that's where our kids that may not be as gifted, the fast athlete, they learn how to change direction. They're making moves on these fast kids all the time. So that's where we're getting in. So our base, what are our main lifts that we talk about that they tend to concentrate? And then what are some of the things we can work on opposing for them?
I think when anyone thinks about the weight room, they automatically start thinking about, let's talk strength exercises, squat, bench, and deadlift. Okay, go from there. And those are great. And those are big lifts. And that's where, if you only have a limited amount of time, that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Okay, we talk about strength and laying a foundation to produce force. We have to have that. So, but a way we like to work on, maybe if we're max on time, you only have so much time. So maybe you can only get your sets of squats that day. Okay, you're hitting some like 4 sets of 5, maybe working some volume, 5 sets of 5, something like that. You know, just a traditional old school type deal there. Maybe that's all you can get, and you have so many kids, that's what you can maximize your time for. So a way we can go at working some of those smaller muscles as we go through is really working a simple pause. Okay, maybe they hit a heavy day one day and they're going to come in for pause work the other day so they can work on getting better at their squats. Okay, building that foundational pattern. But when they go to the bottom is now when they get down there, they're going to sink, they're going to hold, and then punch out. Now what I'm doing on that, okay, I'm kind of putting the brakes on. I'm teaching my body how to use those brakes. But on top of that, now I'm getting those little muscles to help aid to redrive me up. Okay, but the big point of the pause there, so I can't use momentum to kind of slingshot me back up. So now the little ones really grab and really work to help punch on up and out. So that's one simple way to work on it. I mean, it's not really isolating every little muscle around the hip and all that, but it really does a good job when you're talking about specific, what you're doing in jumping and running and stuff like that, to work on those specific muscles. So,
well, and that's what we're talking about. Those athletes that, you know, if they're our high school athletes or our junior high athletes that are in the weight room, how many of you hit that sticking point where you're just not going through? Again, changing it. You can do the same basic lift, but creating pauses, creating different depths that you work on. More of a full squat, half squat, quarter squats with pauses, pause exploding up instead of just always the same thing is going to give you a boost to help give you that back up. Now, some of the other things I know Bobby does, and we'll get in with the weight room as well, is, you know, you got 4 guys on a squat rack, and we've got athletes, sometimes we've had athletes, we've got 60 of them at a time working out. Well, how do you make that adjustment? Because you only have time to get that. Well, you know what? You don't. Because while you've got one squatting, one spotting, what are the other 2 doing? How about we work on some of the opposing muscle groups or some of those secondary muscle groups, or now you got your bench and all, but we want to work specific to rear deltoids and getting some of those things in with some of the band work and some of those, so that we can get everything worked in together. Don't just have 3 athletes standing around while one's working. You know, when we do that in the weight room, when we're helping out our spotters, you know, I've changed that from years ago. Our spotters used to be the ones to help them as they squat so they don't go all the way down, you know, they'll hit a pot, they don't collapse. That's what safety bars are for. My thing I've done is to help, and Bobby does, is we help get these kids to learn as a spotter. They're coaches now. Get them to understand, is that kid squatting? They're watching from behind. And yes, you don't want them to collapse or go, but if the safety bars are set where they need to, if they get to a point, teach them to bail and get out of it.
And really, it's a bigger jeopardy to have a kid try to really grab the weight, because now you might potentially have 2 kids getting into the issue. If you just set those catch bars up and let's say I'm going here, I just can't get up, then I just, boom, drop. I roll it back and I stand up, and you're really safe. So it's safer for both people there. Okay.
Yeah, you get that part going, and that goes to the whole nother. Okay, and we'll get back to this in a second. But when they're squatting and going through, you talk about safety going through that. Yeah, and you've got the athlete behind her squatting, and they get in and they get real close and they're doing their thing. Okay, that's great. He's coming up. How many times have you seen when you got one on each end of the squat bar? How many times do you have those 15-year-old kids? They're going to time it just right where one all of a sudden thinks, oh, he can't make it, and he lifts that bar up to help. And the other one, oh, he didn't know he was ready to do that. He thought he was okay. Well, now you're going to jack somebody's back up or pop somebody in the chin with a bar on the other side.
Yeah.
So let's just teach them to do that. So I teach them from behind. They're doing that squat. The job from the guy in behind is also to watch and see. As he's squatting, if he sees his heels come up, that means he's shooting his knees too far forward. Tell the guy to get his hips back. Also, you can see if they get too much weight on the inside of their feet, their knees will start to roll in. So from behind, we can't see that, but we can see what's going on with the feet. Those feet come too much pressure here and very little on the little toe side. You got real problems going on with the knee. So right away, that guy can coach behind, or girl, of course, in there in the weight room, teach them what they're doing. They're going to learn a lot more by teaching them that. And the chances of them messing up are going to be less because they've already been focused on that for the other guy.
Yeah.
So getting those in, so you've already got one working, one spotting, watching that. The other 2, what are they doing? They should be doing something opposing muscle group. So if we're doing, we're on squats, what's something else that we could work on opposing for the other guys on the other side?
A lot of it depends. Let's say maybe we're doing some volume, we're in an off season. Generally, we'll do a 1-leg hinge type of movement, 1-leg RDL, get the body stretched out. Maybe they're working for a little more strength of the period. I'll put them into a half kneeling quad stretch or some core lifts and stuff like that. But also what I like to do in season to really get the most condensed in our time is we're going to try to go to like a chin up or something like that in the backside of the squat if you can. Sometimes it's not ideal for everybody, but we like to do it because after you got that bar on your back, now you can kind of decompress the spine a little bit doing some chin ups. But we like to do an upper body pulling motion, whether it's here or here when we're doing a lower body push. You're not really going to take a whole lot from the squat then at that point. so you can get recovery time in there too. But also now you can get something else in there. So we like to add a pole in. Now you're getting some extra work, and you're not just sitting and hanging out in there when you could be getting more work done. You can actually work on your conditioning a little bit in that aspect too. So
yeah, that's what the other guys. If you got that bench, all the racks come with the bench press. Well, if they're squatting, they're not benching, so the bench is out here. So you set the bench out on the side. You got the other two. They're doing one-arm rows, pulling in through there, or they're doing something out for the side. But again, getting them busy, keeping them moving, because I can tell you, as a coach, there's nothing worse than having 6 squat racks, 6 guys working, and now you've got 30 other guys that are just standing around. Because what are those 30 other guys going to be doing?
Goofing on.
Yeah, goofing on. It's a waste of time. That's why you only get 4 sets of squats in an hour, or 45 minutes of actual work time with the kids in there, which is ridiculous with that many guys in there. You should be able to get a lot more volume in there in that amount of time. So look at those secondaries. So long we're talking benches, everybody's doing bench press. What's something else they could be doing for the other guys?
Something we like to do that's really easy on that is, again, we can go to something we can aid it in with a lower body pull and a 2-leg RDL deadlift or something like that. But also we can move on through, and let's say maybe it's off season, I want some upper body volume. I'll throw it right away with the face pull. Now we're getting them back in that externally rotated position. We're trying to get some of those muscles pulled down and back. Because really when you're bench, you want to have those upper back and those shoulder blades kind of locked down and back anyway. So now you're getting those muscles to really kind of, I guess, take off that dimmer switch, get a little blood into them, so that way you can feel get in the right position. You can also get some work there to get out of this rounded position and get pulled back. So there's a lot of ways you can go about it wherever you are. And there's always something that can be done to maximize your time and keep kids, I think at the end of the day, just engaged in what they're doing. Because if they got a lot of hang time, they're going to get disengaged. The workout's not going to be as good. They're not going to push it as hard. So, but that's one right there. And when you talk about imbalances right there, if kids aren't getting a lot of external rotation, let's say I got a lot of kids that are pretty rounded over, and you guys seen a lot of them, okay? There's an easy way to throw an extra pulling motion in, like we talked about previously, trying to get a 2 pulls to 1 push. So let's say maybe later on in the workout, if I got a bench here, okay, and maybe I do like a RDL, 2-leg RDL, I'll do a bench, and then my face pulls, boom, there's an extra pull right there. And then later on when I go to, let's say, a 1-leg squat, and then I go to a row, a 1-arm row, 2-arm row, okay, a chin up, whatever it is, now I got another pulling motion pretty easy right there. Okay, and you get some arm care. So, I mean, just by adding something else extra in, it really uses your time a lot better. It maximizes it. But now also you're killing a lot more birds with one stone there. So
and too many people think about, okay, we're face pulls and all this. I showed before a few weeks ago at some of it. You look at the strength part of it on the YouTube page. We don't all have cables to be able to do that. But, these tubes that we use, or bands or any of those kind of things, you get it. They're inexpensive. You get it. You can use it. Just check them often to make sure they're not drying out and snapping on anybody. But you can do a lot with it, because that's the old thing. Again, our football players, think of how many of these cavemen looking, that's what I know when we were in high school, our guys spent all the time doing bench and curls. That was it. And you guys walk out of the weight room and they're all rounded in here. So let's start working on these opposing muscle groups. Because yes, our baseball players are essential for the rotator cuff, the stabilizers, and then through the neck. But our football players, the same thing. How many of you guys that are out there, the dads and coaches and things that are out there that played 20 years ago, and now how does your neck and how does your back feel, upper back, compared to where you worked on flexibility? How many of you could actually get your arms back here tight, and we get our stretch where we're putting the thumbs up, and we can actually get those hands within a couple of inches, or like Bobby, touching? How many of you guys can do that? That stabilizing, keeping it going is what's taking all that stress off the shoulders and the back. So let's make sure we're doing that with these kids. And again, they're not too young at 10 years old. Bobby, from, look at some of the old pictures. As he could walk, he was lifting, but we were doing basic stuff. But my daughter was doing the same thing. Dance, gymnastics. It was just something that we required because I wanted them healthier than I was at this point, with the knees and the back problems and stuff going on. We didn't understand about strength training. So we know now that strength training for kids is beneficial. That doesn't mean we go into the garage with dad's stuff and just go crazy and start doing snatches with our 5-year-olds. But what it means is, let's start working on that balance. Let's let them do the bench, is fine, and our squats and step-ups and all these things going in. But what are you doing for the opposite side? Let's make sure we're getting that even body going through so they're healthy, so they've got their strength, the strength imbalances. Look at left and right. We're not just squatting, we're lunging also. We're doing step-ups, we're doing reverse and ladder. Let's see who's got the balance, who can do that same strength on both sides. Because most of them, and this is what we teach our athletes in our speed stuff, they get great one way. Make great cuts right to left. Well, they're doing left to right. They're watching the game. I can tell you the opposing coach is watching you as well. And they're saying, you know what, that guy's great right to left. We're going to go the other way because they can't change direction with the beam on that side. Or his change of direction. He can't decelerate with that left leg to change into it. So we always have an advantage there. Yeah. We don't want to give them advantage. Our Strength of America athletes are solid. They're well balanced, so they can react, and they're healthier. So that's what we want you thinking about in the strength part of it. These secondary lifts. Secondary doesn't mean they're not as important as the other ones that we're doing. But without those, like I said, we can have the strongest guy out there. He's squatting 400 pounds. He's doing reps with that. Strongest athlete. But you know what? He pulled his hamstring and he's sitting on the bench. So he's the strongest guy out there on the bench getting water for everybody else. Big deal. We want him healthy and to be able to keep going and less chance of injury if we've got that balance.
Yeah. I think when you talk about football, you got to think about how many times are these guys pushing, doing that pushing motion. So when we're talking about imbalances, that's going to be a big one right away. So you got to know that we got to get to more pulling actions rather than pushing, and maybe on top of pushing, maybe if we don't want to get them on top of that pushing motion all the time, maybe we get a heavy bench day so we can still work on our strength a little bit there. Okay, we can always shorten the range of motion and do different things there, but maybe the other day you do, if you have the dumbbells to use it, you do a one-arm dumbbell bench press. Now we're checking side to side again. This is an easy way that I have to say that, hey, maybe I don't do a bunch of assessments. I don't have the time, so I can't know if, hey, right to left. But if I throw them all into one-arm bench press, now they're working stability in that shoulder, a little core anti-rotation and stuff. But I can see right off the bat if I'm walking around that, hey, this kid is very weak on his left side opposed to his right. So now that gives you an extra pushing motion, but now you can work on kind of balancing things out, making sure that in that motion you're strong side to side. Okay. Then, yes, we add in our back and our pull aparts, our face pulls and stuff like that to help aid in some of that also. But there's another situation there. Let's go ahead so we got some of the rotator cuff. We're talking about some of the upper back. The neck goes involved with that too. When we get a lot of work from that also when we do our face pulls and some of our pull aparts, especially if we're higher up. So I think that's another thing we want to think about when we're talking about concussions across all sports. I think we have we may even have more in some of the soccer or different things like that, or just about the same as we do in football and stuff. So we're more and more starting to look at doing a lot more of these pulling motions and shrugging or different bridge-based stuff to work with some of these athletes so they can stabilize, not get the bobblehead. Outside of that, when we're talking about hand muscles, something we've started to incorporate more. We're starting to realize we got some smaller guys in football and some different sports. And they're running into issues when they're tackling, or maybe they're on the basketball court. They can't handle a ball as well, okay, or different things that they're getting physical. Now their hands aren't getting, they're running into some jams or some different things like that, One thing we started incorporating was really simple, was just like old school days, just grabbing some rubber bumpers and just carrying them, okay? If you don't have space to walk and do a carry with it, you can just hold it in place. But now there's a way right away. You tell a kid to hold a 25-pound bumper right there and see how long they can hold it. Probably a lot of them can't hold it for very long, okay? They may start to be at 15, starting to lose it. So there's a good check right away, too. And you can find out that can be a weak link in some of your game. Let's say a basketball player trying to dribble, handle a ball, okay, that's going to lose it pretty quick, okay? Baseball, softball, all that type of deal. So a lot of sports need that, but now it's looking into, maybe we think we work grip in our rowing, and we do, but then again, if that bar is pretty small, we can wrap. We're not really working those hands as much as we think, maybe. So it's just looking at areas, and when you go through your program or think about stuff, say, hey, maybe we're a little bit weak right here, so maybe we should just start throwing in some holds, Maybe even like we do, we don't have a lot of time to do a lot extra, so maybe I know, like with our football, we got to throw our net care stuff right in the beginning for our primer, or our baseball, softball, overhead athletes, we're going to throw pull aparts, face pulls. We throw that in our primer. And I've started to make more of a universal one because I know a lot of these kids, their posture isn't great anyways. So now we're going to get some extra work to kind of get those muscles and then get some volume and frequency there.
Yeah, and that part, again, goes to our youth coaches. So guys are out there, think of what you're actually doing for strength. And we know you're out there with the 10, 11, 12-year-olds. You don't have access to a weight room anyway, but you're on the field. What do they do for strength? Well, typically you're having them do squats, you're doing squat jumps, you're doing lunges, you're doing some hill sprint work. How many times are you doing the upper back work? How about getting that rope and work on some tug of war stuff that we did? Just take some towels. He's got a towel, I've got one. And the guys are working back and forth, doing pulls back. They do single ones, you do doubles, you're taking back and forth. But things that you can work with that back make a huge difference on it. So, if you're doing dips or something set up, what do you do opposite side of that? So find out all these different things that they're getting involved in. And you guys, you got, how many of you ask your parents out there, hey, how many of you guys have some plates at home? Get 5, 10, and 25-pound plates. And for these guys, that's all they're going to need. Most of them, 5 and 10s will be enough. And don't let them, they put their hands on the hole of it and put their hand and hold it. It's easy, grip. It's like grabbing a suitcase, easy. But now if we're going to hold on the edge of them or just the finger, the lip of it, and walk that way, or do one side, do that down. So we walk on one end and then switch hands on the other side coming back. So they're not leaning here, but I want them centered. I want a tall core.
Yeah, they're getting some core work on top of that too.
Yeah, find all these. There's ways you can do it. You don't need a weight room. And with these younger guys, strength training, like we've talked about before, is just resistance to going. But make sure their form is right. Yeah. Just like doing push-ups. You get 100 push-ups, but they've only got 8 good ones because their arms are in the wrong spot, or they look like seals and they're bouncing around.
Fish out of water.
Get them tight as they're moving, but make sure they understand they've got to be perfect in what they're doing. The extra's fine. They can't do any more push-ups. The rest of the guys are going. Tell them to hold that plank. That's going to be hard after they've done all the push-ups they can get out of it. So change things around, find things that they can do. You've got the sleds. Same thing. We'll pull the sleds and do the hips and do our pops like our face pulls, but snap that up towards them and pull them. We'll drag back and pull that sled back. Hips, everything.
So while you're talking about sleds, sled pushes and stuff, I think that's an easy way to start working in some of the feet and the ankle muscles. Mm-hmm. And we start to think about that they don't get worked a whole lot. Maybe we think we're working them because we're doing a squat, but really, the stabilizers and some of the knee and then different parts of the ankle and the foot there, the strength down there isn't going to be as great. So I think that's a good way right off the bat. Have you felt like that's helped out quite a bit with some of your stuff?
Yeah, a lot with these guys. Because it also gets them in the posture of sprinting.
Yeah.
Have these big sleds are up here high. Well, I don't want to run them that way. I want those hips back here so we get them holding lower. Or we started out for years, even before the sleds, just put the plate on the floor, the 25 or 45-pound plate, and they run, digging their legs in. They get that leg drive, the hip, they're pulling up, getting the extension, and they have to have a tight core. Because if they're wiggly, well, they buckle and they hit the floor every time.
Shift and roll.
So they start finding that. So it's change variations of where they're at, where they're landing, where they're driving into it. But that's what we want, their body in that position. So when they take off, they explode and move through like an athlete. But that's what we want. We don't want them little fish bodies going in, that they actually explode and they move. So our knees and body are always ready to go.
So I think when I think about your type of training too, I think about, I never had an issue with my feet and ankles like some of these kids do. And I think a lot of the stuff that we did on top of, regular plyos and jumps and just sprinting in general, if you jump and you do sprints, you're going to get some good work for the calves and ankles already. But to think about all the cone hops and stuff, we did straight leg cone hops, all the work from the ankles that we got and the repetition and stuff. I know I like to throw in some basic jump ropes. Yep. That way it starts to get them learn how to absorb and redrive and get some of those muscles to really get both sides of the equation there. But something I like to do on top of that, maybe especially if we're in basketball season or getting ready for it, some of these kids, basketball players, they got a lot of different issues with their ankles. And we're not really meant to be in shoes a whole lot. And you'll see them with these shoes that go all the way up their ankles and they have a brace on top. So now we're not getting the opportunity to work those. So what I like them to do when they come to my training is get rid of the brace. When they get in the weight room, now they're going to take shoes off and be barefoot when they're going through, like, let's say they're single leg box squat, single leg RDL and stuff like that. Now they can get those muscles really working on stabilizing and working. But that's a way we like to tackle that and go through there.
Yeah, that's the secondary things we talk about. We're using the ankles. We're running, like I tell some of the kids when they run, they don't use their feet. They look at me like I'm nuts.
Pushing that ground away.
But they're not pushing away. They're not doing any of that work. They're just slapping the ground as they go across. So we can hear them running on grass. We know we've got a problem. And making impact and exploding coming all the way through. Like Bobby talked about the cone jumps, punch, and then transition into a sprint. We do split squats. Any of our kids know split squats, down on one knee, splitting, jump up, switch legs, and land softly. Again, forward lunge, push back, a reverse lunge, push back, side one, hit all different angles, but sports are not using 2 legs all the time moving out. Not too many times we see her exploding up. You're off balance, 1 foot off, you're changing direction with 1 leg, not one. We have to get all of those into it. So take a look at some of the things they're already doing for our coaches out there in the field in the practice time. And are you really taking that extra on there? And we don't have to take extra time, but think of the drills and what you're doing. Think of body positionings, and you can add all these into it. Or in the weight room, if you've got 3 guys standing around on 1 rack, that's a problem. Give them something to do to stabilize these things to keep them healthy.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. So I think at the end of the day, I know we went through a lot of different things, a lot of different topics there, but it's just know your strengths and know your weaknesses. If you're handling your strengths very well, let's say handling your squats, handling your presses and all that good, make sure you're taking the time to work on those muscles on the opposing side. Because when we talk about imbalances, if I'm going through, I got a powerful athlete, they keep driving and pushing and all that stuff. And sooner or later, they're going to run into an issue. They're going to end up with some overuse injuries. They're going to burn out. Something's going to start to give because they're going to start to get wear and tear from all that drive and not being strong enough on those stabilizer muscles or backside muscles to really help keep them locked down and structured. So I think just take the time and realize some of that stuff. Your best athlete isn't any good if they're on the sideline or on the bench because they're hurt from something simple that could have been done early on. So
look at those and then ask these questions. Again, that's what it's about. You want to keep giving the most to these kids because you guys are volunteering a lot of time. You're putting in a lot of time helping these out. And as parents, you want the best for the kids. So you can't always rely. Coach can't handle everything that's going on. And that's the hard part, is expecting that football coach or basketball or whatever it is to handle all aspects of it. That's like right now with our teachers. We're expecting them to do everything for these kids. They can't. We need to do more for them. And we want to be that resource to help you out. So email us, let us know the questions, message us depending on where you're seeing this and what's going on. Make sure you're part of the YouTube page. We've got all the weekly videos and stuff going out, watching the Instagram and Twitter. We're putting a lot of different stuff out there as well. I'm going to go ahead and put out there April 7th, I believe. That's Saturday. We're planning on our next camp. We're actually doing a free football speed and agility combine. So look for it this weekend. This will come out on Saturday. So by then we'll have a page for you. We plan on putting that on our Facebook page as an event where you can sign up for that and reserve your space and get all the information. Once you do that, there'll just be a thing you'll email, get the email down in there. We'll send you how to prepare, what to do, get set up. We're also going to have one of these episodes on how to prepare and things going into summer, because summer's a big part for us. I know we do with the camp, but we want to make sure these kids come back from it and understand what the rest of them have done, how they eat, how they hydrate, what they're supposed to be doing to get themselves ready, how important sleep is. All of those parts we're going to put into it. So this will be one of the next ones that we're kicking off April 7th, I believe. So check that out. We'll look at the pages on that. And we're doing that in Chandler, but we're also planning on getting another one set up in Mesa and in Phoenix. So if you're not on the list yet, let us know and we'll see what we can do to help your league and get part of that too. So anything else you got for them?
No. Keep an eye out for the YouTube. We'll start posting some videos on some of these different things that you can do for some of these smaller muscles that don't generally get looked at or worked. And we'll start putting through that. And again, just like Bob said, when you're going through, if you are in a situation where maybe you don't really know how to work certain muscles or know how to work it in with your routine, just shoot us an email and ask. We've had to be pretty creative with some of the places that we've been at. So, we've gone in that process where I don't know how I'm going to do that in this space with this time with what I have, but there's always a way. And we found a lot of unique ways and from some different other people that we followed also. So use this as a resource. Okay. We're always here to help and we're happy to. So don't be afraid to ever ask a question or anything, because we probably asked that question in the past to somebody else.
Once or twice.
So, yeah, he asks me all the time because I'm just great, but 2.0.
I'm just checking and making sure he's picking it up. He's got it so far.
He's losing it.
Thanks for following. We'll see you guys next week. Watch for all the pages coming up and let us know how we can help.
Have a good day. See ya.
Thanks.